faithfully delivering value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally Book Talk. Today, I'll be interpreting the book Animation Life for You, Disney Biography Part 2. Continuing from the previous episode, we discussed Disney, who was a businessman even as a kid and started his entrepreneurial journey as an adult. In the 1920s and 1930s, Disney saw the huge potential of sound animation and launched Steamboat Willie with synchronized sound. Steamboat Willie, Flowers and Trees, Three Little Pigs, and other animated shorts. These innovative films won him Oscar awards and earned him audience love. This strengthened Disney's confidence to create an animated feature film. Why did Disney choose Snow White as his first animated feature? How was the first Disneyland created, and what Disney philosophy does it represent? Now, let's dive into the next part of our interpretation. I'll break it down into three parts. First, Snow White and Life's comics. Second, the Warriors. And third, Dreamland. Okay, first, Part 1. Disney chose Snow White for his first animated feature for a reason. When he was 15, he watched a live-action Snow White, starring actress Margaret Clark. Even though that movie seems rough today, its release in Kansas City was huge, drawing around 67,000 people. That movie wasn't just one of the first features Disney watched. It made a lasting impact on him. He realized Grimm's fairy tales could be stretched into features, especially with Snow White's Seven Dwarfs, which offered lots of room to expand. On December 21st, 1937, when Snow White premiered, it got rave reviews from critics and audiences alike. 74-minute film used a multiplane camera to create vivid layers and depth in the animation. In the movie, the animators gave the Seven Dwarfs distinct looks and names that matched their traits: Doc, Grumpy, Dopey, Happy, Sneezy, Bashful, and Sleepy. The interactions and bond between the dwarfs and Snow White touched audiences on screen. Viewers, who weren't into shorts and doubted a feature-length cartoon, ended up crying with the dwarfs by Snow White's bed. In an interview, Disney told the New York Times reporter that characters who are just moving images won't evoke emotional responses from the public. Our biggest goal was to develop distinct personalities in animated characters. We used humorous exaggeration to give them human flaws, breathing life into them. Disney wanted animation to mirror life's comics, like Grumpy, who resisted Snow White most but also cared for her most deeply. Grumpy conveyed those complex emotions exceptionally vividly. When Grumpy stuck his tongue out at Snow White, it showed resentful concern rather than hostility. The dwarfs' rich, convincing emotions made them funny and endearing characters, not mere caricatures. To make characters authentic, Disney immersed himself completely in animation production. Employees recalled him often looking wild, disheveled, and drenched in sweat. His feedback was hyper-detailed. For Grumpy's tongue scene, he requested earlier but slower reactions to avoid stiffness. For the dwarf's mind to home scene, Disney wanted varied backgrounds with trees showing white patches from missing bark. They'd pass through pine forests, then aspen groves, with moss-covered rocks showing green new growth and blackened old patches. Years later, Disney still regretted flaws when revisiting Snow White. He admitted, "We weren't truly ready, needed 2 or 3 more years to achieve our vision for Snow White." For instance, the princess's animation felt underdeveloped and some scenes rushed. Like Snow White praying for the dwarfs. If not hurried, audiences would have appreciated those moments more. Disney discussed this with Chaplin, who advised, "Don't fear making audiences wait during your film. Don't fear slowing your pacing when needed." But unquestionably, Snow White revolutionized perceptions, proving hand-drawn animation could rival live action. Disney transformed the art in mere years. Snow White's success completely changed Disney Studios' financial situation. In 1937, before Snow White's release, the studio's total revenue was only $1.56 million. But in the first 9 months of 1938, it nearly tripled to almost $4 $6.35. By May 1939, the film's earnings reached $6.05, making it the most successful sound film of the time. Disney received an Oscar Lifetime Achievement Award for Snow White's innovative achievements. In June 1938, he received honorary degrees from Yale and Harvard, and Snow White's success ushered in a golden age of animation for Disney Studios. But with the outbreak of World War II, Disney also faced challenges and trials from the war. Next, we'll move into part 2. War. The war years first brought a financial crisis. In the years after Snow White, the studio produced classics like Pinocchio and Fantasia. However, these films didn't perform well at the box office, partly because World War II reduced revenue from Europe. Studio revenue declined steadily after Snow White, and by 1941, Disney owed nearly $2.08 to Bank of America. To cope with the economic crisis, the Disney brothers chose to go public in 1948. At that time, Disney's team had expanded to 1,200 people, accounting for half of the industry. But to cut costs, the studio not only reduced salaries, but also laid off more than half the employees, sparking a major strike. However, what upset employees wasn't just pay cuts and layoffs, but also the studio's attitude towards them. As the team grew, Disney became more distant from the employees. A director named Bill Roberts strongly opposed Disney's excessive focus on what he called creative and charismatic helpers. And for those tedious but essential jobs, Disney showed neither interest nor respect. Amid the turmoil, some employees considered joining unions to protect themselves. Disney's response was to give a speech in February 1941, trying to persuade employees to leave the unions. In his speech, he discussed solutions to the crisis, emphasizing that individuals should work sincerely every day, and all problems would be solved. At the end of the speech, he said, "This company is moving forward, and if you want to keep up, you must work hard. Remember, the strong survive, the weak fall by the wayside. That's the universal law. I don't care about idealistic nonsense. Nothing changes this law." Disney's remarks only poured fuel on the fire. After that speech, employee sentiment suddenly shifted toward the union, ultimately sparking a 5-week strike. As an aside, the strike leaders were Jewish, and Disney's resentment toward them fueled accusations of anti-Semitism. But the book's author contends no evidence proves Disney held such prejudice. Roy noted that Walt didn't care about a painter's hairstyle, lifestyle, skin color, etc., as long as they delivered results. Now we have to pay in some form common sense. To Walt, a good painter was simply a good painter, immensely valuable. Regardless, the strike caused animators to leave and affected production of the next feature, Dumbo. Plus, with tight finances, Dumbo used a low-cost, rapid production method, running just 68 minutes, barely feature length. But Dumbo still embodied Disney's vision of animation as life's comic. Animator Bill Titla drew from his fatherhood experiences when creating Dumbo's character. Titla had a 2-year-old who'd pester him while he read or worked. Titla would yell at the child, who'd then stand confused, clutching Titla's hand and crying.
Titla channeled these experiences into Dumbo, and the big-eared flying elephant ultimately won audiences' hearts.
After its October 1941 release, the film received universal praise and was slated for Time's December cover. However, things didn't always go smoothly. On December 7th that year, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, America entered World War II, and the cover subject changed to General MacArthur. The war presented Disney with enormous challenges. In Disney's words, movie theaters didn't have time for Disney or kids crazy about him anymore. They could just screen any old film. During the war, Disney leased unused studio space to Lockheed for their artists to create complex aircraft blueprints. He took military contracts to make films helping sailors identify enemy planes and ships, and created Donald Duck animations for the Treasury Department to sell war bonds. But this is not what these wartime projects not only covered previous animation losses, but accelerated Disney Studios' transformation. It was no longer just an animation studio. Animation wasn't even its main focus anymore. The studio also started making commercial films for corporations, like How to Use Hand Tools for General Motors and The Dawn of Better Living for Westinghouse. In September 1945, the Disney brothers hired two professional managers to share responsibilities. And Disney stepped down as president for Roy, focusing his energy on new features. Though commercial work saved the studio, Disney and Roy disliked this field. Their reasoning was simple. Products and characters made for others didn't belong to the studio, yielding no residuals while being subject to client demands. If films failed, they damaged the studio's reputation. After the war, the Disney's finances didn't immediately recover without government contracts. They avoided losses only by re-releasing Snow White and Pinocchio. In 1946, the studio laid off nearly half its staff again. In the mid to late 1940s, a preoccupied Disney rushed films to market, lowering standards with forced humor and weak narratives, and the market responded quickly. Though people still loved Mickey and Donald, they began favoring Disney's rivals. Now, like Warner Brothers' Bugs Bunny and MGM's Tom and Jerry. Post-war, Disney released classics like Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and Cinderella, with Cinderella's $2.02 cost earning nearly $8 million in its first year, becoming Disney's biggest hit since Snow White. But by then, feature animations offered Disney limited fulfillment. He shifted his focus to other film genres like nature documentaries, an interest sparked during Bambi's production. For Bambi to successfully cartoonize animals, Disney hired wildlife artists for classes, sent staff on field studies, and even kept live skunks and fawns at the studio. In 1948, they launched True Life Adventures with Seal Island, about Alaskan seals, costing just $86,000 but grossing $430,000, winning the 1949 Oscar for Best Live Action Short. The second film, Beaver Valley, cost $100,000 but earned $660,000. To create cohesive narratives, some true life scenes combined footage from multiple shots, like in Seal Island, with a scene of a baby seal losing its mother. The crew exploited humans' inability to distinguish individual seals. What appeared as one baby seal might have been several different ones. But manipulating footage for drama sometimes backfired, clashing with nature's true harshness. I won the way. During the third film, The African Lion, Disney was busy building Disneyland and intervened less. That film actually portrayed lions' hunting instincts with raw honesty, its narration powerfully conveying nature's laws. Though Disney loved true life adventures, the series was too small for his full energy. In the late 1940s, Disney discovered a new passion. Next, we enter part 3, Dreamland. In his 40s, Disney reignited his childhood obsession with trains. He'd loved trains since youth, his hometown Marceline connected to the world via railroads.
Middle-aged Disney learned metalwork and carpentry to build a 1:8 scale train in his mansion, laying 800 meters of track around his property. On weekends, he'd personally host guests for rides on his miniature train.
However, the miniature train ceased operations after several accidents. The entire track layout and locomotive cost about $50,000. For an amateur hobbyist at that time, this was a huge amount. But Disney recouped most costs by advertising in model train magazines and selling castings and blueprints. In 1948, Disney attended a railroad exhibition in Chicago. Before returning home, he visited Greenfield Village, created by Henry Ford, founder of Ford Motor Company. This outdoor museum, built in 1929, carries strong autobiographical elements. It features replicas of Ford's school and his first automobile factory. Additionally, Greenfield Village restored buildings from across centuries. At Greenfield Village, Disney's imagination ignited. He was no longer content with just a home model train. In August 1948, he drafted a memo outlining plans for a Mickey Mouse park. This park would be a small town centered around a city hall and train station. Additionally, shops would sell Disney toys, books, and artwork by Disney artists. Given the studio's finances, launching this plan immediately was impractical. Not until 1952 did Disney publicly reveal plans to build Disneyland. The park's premise was simple. It would be where people find happiness and gain knowledge.
To avoid shareholder criticism, Disney formed a private company for park design, funding it personally.
Though living comfortably, Disney wasn't wealthy. His main assets were company stocks. He raised funds by mortgaging his life insurance for 30 years, borrowing over $100,000, upsetting his wife Lillian. In 1956, Lillian said, "I was always anxious and insecure. He kept saying we were rich, but we actually had nothing." The park was finally located in Anaheim, Orange County, southeast of Los Angeles. It would be divided into four main areas: Fantasyland and Frontierland. Tomorrowland and Adventureland would connect via Main Street. A steam train would circle the park with a moat separating it from outside world, blocking city views to immerse visitors. Disney envisioned Disneyland as a place of hope and dreams, a city blending reality and fantasy, where every ride serves a story and setting. That's why the park didn't introduce its first thrill ride, a roller coaster, until 4 years after opening. To preserve the park's theme, he built the coaster into a mountain, letting passengers circle down for a bobsled adventure. After finalizing plans and designs, the next step was acquiring land to build attractions. Then Disney realized he needed studio involvement and additional funding sources. Ultimately, the Disney struck a deal with ABC. ABC funded the park in exchange for 35% ownership and all snack stand profits for 10 years, since those were highly lucrative.
Additionally, Disney had to provide TV programming to ABC, which was their top priority.
ABC's growth had stalled then, without any hit shows. As for Disney, he'd been interested in television since the mid-1940s. By the 1950s, he saw TV as film promotion, and ABC was perfect since they didn't meddle with his productions. The Disneys appeared on ABC shows like Disneyland and Mickey Mouse Club, promoting the park and upcoming films while airing classics. Though worried that revealing park construction or film production might break the magic, sharing these behind-the-scenes moments actually built trust and created its own enchantment. On July 17, 1955, Disneyland officially opened. Due to tight deadlines, it wasn't fully finished that day. Scorching heat, dry fountains, broken rides, and thousands with counterfeit tickets made opening day a notorious disaster. Despite this, Disneyland became a huge success, drawing over 20,000 daily visitors within a month. Its first year alone attracted 3.6 million visitors. Disney publicly stated, "The park will never be completed. I'll keep perfecting it." While perhaps just rhetoric for opening unfinished, the park truly underwent constant improvement. The book's author notes, theme parks weren't novel then, but Disneyland succeeded through obsessive detail. For instance, Disney forbade costumed employees from wandering between themed zones. Similarly, the park initially hired external contractors for cleaning and security. But cleaners did shoddy work. Guards treated visitors rudely like rioters, so Disney swiftly replaced them. With service-trained internal staff, Disney also required designers to queue, dine, and ride with guests to observe reactions. Disney was hypersensitive to visitor feedback, personally touring the park weekly with aides to spot issues and plan fixes. And the rest must cast a victim. Once, he clocked the Jungle Cruise at 4 minutes instead of the required 7. He angrily told staff, "You raced past hippos so fast I couldn't tell rhinos from hippos," and got it fixed immediately. He even noticed ice cream sticks, demanding flat ones over round to prevent tripping hazards. Second, Disneyland's success stemmed from cultivating a serene, relaxing atmosphere. Disney knew adults, especially young parents, sought calm in orderly settings, not thrills. He told the New York Times, "I want to create wholesome, all-ages environments." While other parks had charm but safety risks, Disneyland had 45 full-time guards and its design fostered subtle tranquility and order, unlike noisy, chaotic rivals, enhancing visitor security. Disney believed such environments encouraged better behavior. Disneyland's comfortable environment makes people linger longer, and the longer they stay, the more they spend. Just 7 weeks after opening, Disneyland had welcomed 1 million visitors, 50% above projections, with per capita spending doubling. Another groundbreaking aspect was Disneyland's use of audio animatronics technology. The classic Pirates of the Caribbean ride featured 65 animatronic figures, pirates, townsfolk, animals, with engineers using a coded system to design movements, like arm waves, turns, blinks, and pouts. The pirate captain alone had 11 movements designed for him, allowing boat-riding visitors to experience multiple story scenes.
The climax showed the pirate captain auctioning village women.
These animatronic figures shouted, "Redheads, redheads!" Disney worried this scene might offend visitors, but the energetic spectacle and precise movements made audiences overlook concerns. The author notes Disney gave these figures unprecedented precision, advancing animation techniques once again. Yet, this technology couldn't shake the world like Snow White did. In fact, Disney said in 1956 that he hated the Snow White movie.
Because whenever I make a new film, they compare it to Snow White and say it's not as good.
Later films had better production, sound, or dialogue, but none matched Snow White's cultural impact and sensational reception. By the 1960s, an aging Disney toured sound stages in an electric cart. He still scrutinized every production detail while occasionally showing his penny-pinching ways. Once, finding idle staff in a soundstage, he remarked, "Look at them standing there, with their hands in my pockets." One of his most important films during this period was the live-action Mary Poppins.
Disney began live-action films post-war with Treasure Island, Robin Hood, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but Mary Poppins became his biggest hit.
He adapted it from the fairy tale Mary Poppins, with Julie Andrews starring as the magical nanny Mary Poppins. The film received 13 Oscar nominations and won 5 awards. It's Disney's most Oscar-winning film. Lead actress Julie Andrews became that year's Best Actress winner. Disney invested enormous energy and funds into this movie. However, the book's author notes that Disney's most involved areas were often the film's weakest points. For example, he'd walk on set and say, "Make the vase fall and have the maid catch it with her toes."
How about that? Or let's have the piano slide by so the mother catches it while straightening a picture frame. These superficial gimmicks undermine the original story.
And at this time, the public saw Disney either tinkering with model trains or chatting with teens on the Mickey Mouse Club. But interviewers who dug deeper found him different from his public persona. He was reserved, melancholic, and often lost in his own world with intense focus. He could tune out noises like ringing phones and think undisturbed.
Employees recalled him as sometimes attentive, irritable, friendly, or demanding.
But he was more decent and likable than most. Like many entrepreneurs, he buried himself in work and rarely showed genuine interest in others.
Colleagues said he had no patience for those who couldn't keep up or tried to manipulate him.
Despite reaching retirement age, Disney worked harder than ever. He worked 7 days a week, reading scripts even on weekends, only resting during lawn bowling. Then he'd return to scripts. His son-in-law Ron Miller said he couldn't forget work anywhere. One of his biggest concerns then was Disney World in Florida. Its core was Epcot, experimental prototype community of tomorrow. This was Disney's City of Tomorrow, showcasing corporate creativity while being a working community providing jobs. But regrettably, he never saw it realized. In November 1966, Disney was diagnosed with lung cancer and underwent lung surgery. On the morning of December 15, 1966, Disney passed away. According to brother Roy, Disney remained focused on work until his last day, lying in bed, visualizing ceiling tiles as a grid map for Disney World. He said, "Highways will go here, monorail tracks there." Roy noted he fought until the very end. Months after Disney's death, the Carousel of Progress debuted at California's Disneyland. After seeing rotating audio animatronic shows, visitors ascended to view Progress City, Epcot's massive model. But Epcot halted there. Roy canceled further development due to weak entertainment value. In 1971, Epcot Center opened at Walt Disney World, not as Disney's futuristic city, but as hybrid of international pavilions and industrial exhibits. Today's Walt Disney Company has vastly expanded and transformed. In 1954, ABC was the only network interested in funding Disneyland. Who could have imagined ABC becoming Disney property, with Disney parks spanning the globe? Disney's animated features still compete with the classics he personally created. After hearing Disney's animation life, what new insights do you have about him and his work? Share your thoughts in the comments. That concludes our interpretation of Animation Life, Disney Biography, Part 2. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.